You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
The DMV has established itself as a top-tier player in the global cyber industry. DMV Rising is the premier event for cyber leaders and innovators to engage in meaningful discussions and celebrate the innovation happening in and around the Washington, D.C. area. Join us on Thursday, September 18th to connect with the leading minds shaping our field and experience firsthand why the Washington, D.C. region is the beating heart of cyber innovation. Visit dmvrising.com to secure your spot. And now, a word from our sponsor, ThreatLocker, the powerful zero-trust enterprise solution that stops ransomware in its tracks. Allow Listing is a deny-by-default software that makes application control simple and fast. Ring fencing is an application containment strategy, ensuring apps can only access the files, registry keys, network resources, and other applications they truly need to function. Shut out cybercriminals with world-class endpoint protection from ThreatLocker.
Today is September the 15th, 2025. I'm Alice Carruth, and this is T-Minus.
T-minus 20 seconds to LOS egress. Go for deploy. Roger, roll. 5.
A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched the Northrop Grumman CRS-23 Cygnus XL spacecraft to the International Space Station.
4.
Impulse Space has signed a multi-launch agreement with French in-space services company Infinite Orbits.
3.
SES and Cailabs are partnering to test laser communication technology.
2.
European aerospace groups Leonardo, Thales and Airbus are reportedly looking to sign an initial agreement to combine their satellite businesses as early as this year.
1.
Spacecraft manufacturer Apex has closed a $200 million Series D funding round. Our guest today is Patrick O'Neill, Public Affairs and Outreach Lead at the International Space Station US National Lab. Patrick will be bringing us the monthly update on what's going on the ISS, including what just launched over the weekend. Also, are you missing out on World Space Business Week in Paris? Us too, but our friends at Spacewatch Global will be bringing us the latest from the conference, so stay with us for more on that after today's headlines. Happy Monday, everyone. Maria is out sick today, but hopefully she'll be back on her feet quickly. Let's dive into today's intelligence briefing, shall we? Spacecraft manufacturer Apex has closed a $200 million Series D funding round. And as if that number isn't impressive enough, the raise brings the company's valuation to over $1 billion. So for those not keeping up, who are Apex? They are a spacecraft manufacturer of mass-produced configurable satellite bus platforms. They have proven hardware in orbit and say they can mass-produce constellations for communications, sensing, and national security. Apex says it plans to use the funds to expand its production capability. It already controls parts of its supply chain, including avionics, power systems, and more. And the company recently completed the acquisition of Phase 4 Hall-effect thruster technology, allowing Apex to accelerate in-house propulsion system production and de-risk a key bus subsystem. Apex says it plans to use the new funds to expand its production capability. Additionally, Apex has signed a lease to more than double its Los Angeles-based Factory 1 footprint, adding a new 55,000 square foot facility adjacent to its existing site in Playa Vista. That brings its total spacecraft production space to over 100,000 square feet and provides room for research and development, vertical integration of strategic components, and expand mission services and payload integration. The company expects to expand into the new building next year. We think we'll be hearing more from Apex in the near future. Moving on, European aerospace groups Leonardo, Thales and Airbus are reportedly looking to sign an initial agreement to combine their satellite businesses as early as this year. Under Project Bromo, I love that name. It sounds like Project Bros, right? Leonardo, Thales and Airbus plan to set up a satellite manufacturing company to compete with rivals from China and the US. The head of Airbus's Defence and Space Division said in an interview over the weekend that the companies are on the right track, but several issues still need to be clarified before taking on such a major step. Airbus Defence and Space CEO Michael Skolholm told Italian media that operations of this kind require a two-step process, a framework agreement, and then a phase leading to the actual closing of the deal. It's certainly interesting to see this kind of collaboration on the rise in Europe, which is pushing for more sovereign capabilities. Staying in Europe, Luxembourg's SES has announced a partnership with Cailabs to test laser communication technology. SES will test new optical ground stations built by France-based Cailabs to send data from space using laser beams instead of radio waves. By using optical communication, SES expects to be able to boost data transmission speeds, provide more secure links, and help alleviate congestion in an increasingly crowded radio frequency bands. The companies plan to use light beams to transmit data at speeds of up to 10 gigabytes per second. That's about 100 times faster than typical home internet. The new ground stations will enable SES to begin testing space-to-ground optical links ahead of integrating them into commercial services. Impulse Space has signed a multi-launch agreement with French in-space services company Infinite Orbits. The agreement covers the delivery of multiple Infinite Orbit spacecraft to geostationary orbit via Impulse's rideshare program Caravan. The first missions include the launch of several services developed by Infinite Orbits, allowing multiple life extension missions and the deployment of an inspection and surveillance microsatellites fleet. According to the press release, at least 3 spacecraft will be launched in 2027, with additional missions planned each year following. The International Space Station has been and continues to be busy. A day after a Russian cargo resupply mission arrived at the orbiting lab, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched an upgraded Northrop Grumman space freighter. It put the unpiloted spacecraft on course for capture by the ISS early Wednesday. The Northrop Grumman CRS-23 Cygnus XL spacecraft is carrying more than 11,000 pounds of cargo to the orbiting lab. Stick around for Maria's chat with Patrick O'Neill from the ISS US National Lab, coming up to find out more about the science heading to LEO on this mission. That wraps up today's headlines. After Maria's chat with Patrick, we have an update from Torsten at Spacewatch Global from World Space Business Week in Paris. Before that, though, our producer Liz Stokes joins us with some of the other stories we're watching. Liz, what do you have for us?
Globalstar has expanded its operational frequencies to increase its satellite connectivity, and New York Space has established contact and confirmed the health of all 21 satellites launched for the SDA's Tranche 1 Transport Layer mission.
And where can we read more about those stories, Liz?
Links to further reading on all of the stories mentioned throughout the episode can be found in the selected reading section of our show notes and on our website, space.n2k.com. Just click on today's episode title.
Hi T-Minus crew. If you'd like daily updates from us directly in your LinkedIn feed, be sure to follow the official N2K T-Minus page over on LinkedIn. And if you're more interested in the lighter side of what we do here, we are at T-Minus Daily on Instagram. That's where we post videos and pictures from events, excursions, and even some behind-the-scenes treats. Links are in the show notes, and we hope you'll join us there.
And now, a word from our sponsor. The Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute is seeking qualified applicants for its innovative Master of Science in Security Informatics degree program. Study alongside world-class interdisciplinary experts and gain unparalleled educational, research, and professional experience in information security and assurance. Interested U.S. citizens should consider the Department of Defense's Cyber Service Academy program, which covers tuition, textbooks, and a laptop, as well as providing a $34,000 additional annual stipend. Apply for the fall 2026 semester and for this scholarship by February 28th. Learn more at cs.jhu.edu/MSSI.
Today we have our monthly update from Patrick O'Neill, the Public Affairs and Outreach Lead at the International Space Station US National Lab. He spoke with T-Minus host Maria Varmazes.
I know we want to talk more about what's coming up, but I want to just review a few things before we get to what's coming up about what they've been up to. And since we last spoke, which is a lot of things, and we can't possibly cover all of it, but when I was reviewing some of the missions that they've been and experiments they've been working on, bioprinting is the word that comes up a lot. And I realized I don't actually know for sure how that works. And I figured you're the perfect person to ask because I have assumptions about what that entails. But like, what does it entail?
What does it entail? So, as we're kind of chatting offline, it is kind of bridging that gap between science fiction and science reality and using that space environment, taking gravity away. If that's the case, how can we look at things differently? And so Redwire Space has worked with a variety of partners over the years, and they have a biofabrication facility, a bioprinter to the space station to examine, can we eventually print things, whether that's a tissue or an organ? Can we do that more nominally in a space environment and be able to bring that, extract that back down to patients here on the ground? It sounds totally crazy, and this space station's probably not going to be that mechanism where we're actually doing the manufacturing at, but this is where we're doing the validation of, does this work? Does it hold, quite literally? And so the thought is that in that space environment, I'm not a doctor, so I've never done these organs trying to print an organ here on the ground.
I'm also not a doctor.
One of the things, I just play one on TV, right?
Yeah.
So one of the constraints that I've heard is that they kind of fall apart. They don't hold their formation. Whereas the thought is to try to do something like this in a space environment where you no longer have the variables of convection and push and pull. Like you're able to build something in a more perfect environment, and perhaps that structure can kind of clasp together a little more effectively, so that by the time it's ready for it to go back down to Earth and to go to a patient, maybe it's all structured up to the way where even when it gets back into that gravity environment, it's not going to fall apart.
Oh my gosh.
So we're at the very, very basic elements, though, and that's why I always want to preface this where, it could eventually happen. It's not happening yet, but that's why they're testing right now. They're trying to look at different areas. So in the past, Redwire has printed a human meniscus in space, and they brought that back down. They printed a cardiac muscle, also in space. They brought that back down for further evaluation. So they just keep building on that. And so that's the beauty of having the space station, is it allows for us to kind of have this test kitchen in space and to mix and match and see what works. And so that's where the Redwire team is at right now, with a variety of other academic research teams, is seeing kind of how they can leverage this space station to advance the notion of bioprinting in space, and to see if that could potentially be a viable case study or an avenue, a business model for them in the future.
And some other stuff that they've been working on lately with Expedition 73, a lot of crew health experiments. It's important for them and for future human space exploration. Any highlights recently that you might want to highlight about what they've been up to there?
Well, so there's a couple of things that they've been working on. NASA and both the ISS National Lab are very focused on the notion of in-space production applications. How can we use the space environment to manufacture things? And so you alluded to a lot of biomedical research that's been happening. So the crew's been actively working on projects that have been funded by NASA through the In-Space Applications Program, but are sponsored by the ISS National Lab. And some of the ones in particular are looking at induced pluripotent stem cells. So kind of the notion of personalized stem cells, so that we can create more effective therapeutics for us either on the ground here or for astronauts that are living and working in space. I mean, these are all things that we need to put into consideration. And so one of the ones you and I were also talking about too is looking at how blood and how if an astronaut sometimes maybe looks like they have a bit of a puffier face.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
why is that in space versus when they come back down and then things get back to normal, so to speak? And I would say the easiest way to characterize that is think of all of the major arteries that we have and extremities that we have in our body. And here on the ground, you just blood flows naturally all over the place because we're in a gravity-filled environment. You go into a microgravity environment, and now all of a sudden, things flow differently. And where do they flow to? So maybe it only flows to things like the brain, and it's not going to go down to your legs or go down to your arms in the same way that it would otherwise. So maybe that's one of the reasons why it is we see astronauts that have kind of that puffy face where you're seeing much more blood flow going to the areas that your body needs in order for you to be able to live normally.
Yeah, it's interesting, the puffy face and then the congestion. I remember a lot of the astronauts say that they're very congested. And then you would also mention eyesight changes.
Yeah, there seems to be some kind of pressurization that happens where the eyesight of some of the astronauts is impacted a bit. And so the question is, why? I mean, again, if you're going to keep living off of this planet in low Earth orbit or eventually the moon or going all the way to Mars and maybe eventually beyond, we need to be able to understand what's happening to the human body in an area where we're only 250 miles above us. Again, kind of the same type of thing where maybe it's because we're just seeing a lot more of the blood that's kind of going up into that brain area, and maybe it's kind of getting behind areas where it creates scenarios where maybe you're not able to see as effectively. Again, these are all things that NASA is actively evaluating so that way we can live and work not just in low Earth orbit, but in actual space.
Absolutely. And speaking of living and working in space, we've got a resupply mission. That's a really awkward transition on my part. A resupply mission. It's coming up soon as of the time of this recording. It's scheduled for the 14th of September as of the time of this recording.
It's going to be Sunday Fun Day at the Rocket Ranch. Indeed.
That's right. Exciting times. A lot of science is heading up to the ISS, so hard to pick some faves. But I'm always very interested in cancer research. It's just amazing what's happening up on the ISS in terms of what we're learning in microgravity about how the cells react, but also how treatments fare.
The beauty of the space station is also that it's, maybe it's not even sometimes focused only on a particular, like a cancer research, but maybe it's kind of research that's fairly broad in the biomedical field, but it could be applied towards cancer therapeutics. And so one of the projects that's flying on this one, Bristol Myers Squibb, they are no stranger to launching investigations to the space station. They've flown many over the years, and they've used a variety of partners to do so. The last couple of times they've worked with, again, Redwire Space to leverage the pharmaceutical in-space laboratory, or what we like to call it, the pillbox on the space station. And so what's cool about that is it allows for them to look at crystals in space. And so protein crystal growth has been a mainstay of research for the pharmaceutical company for decades. And so again, space station, no different in that regard. Bristol Myers Squibb is looking to find ways to leverage the space environment so that, again, they can create more effective therapeutics that are sometimes they're already in development, and then sometimes you're also looking at things that maybe we can just leverage space, learn something here, and then now we can insert it into other types of R&D. So that's a fun investigation, and again, the fact that you have a variety of large recognizable pharmaceutical companies that see the value and interest in doing research on station, to me, that always demonstrates they're learning something. If you're going back and allocating your time and your effort to doing this, then you know that you're doing something in a novel environment, and you want to continue to exploit that for the benefit of patients here on the ground or beyond.
Yeah, and another industry that's very interested in crystal growth, especially in space, is the semiconductor industry.
To your point, it can be allocated in advanced materials or advanced materials, communications, things of that nature. So that's definitely a big thing for us. I would say that, speaking of satellite technology, advanced communications, there's Revolution Space. They're going to be launching an investigation that's actually going to be going in Cygnus. So it's going to arrive on the Cygnus spacecraft, but it's not going to be brought in with the rest of the investigations. It's actually going to be staying on the Cygnus craft, and then when the Cygnus vehicle leaves the space station, then they're going to start to look at some propulsion systems. And this could advance some R&D in the area where, instead of it being a much more pronounced or a large satellite, maybe it's like smaller sats. But it's also kind of fun, too, to mess with the Cygnus in that regard, because these are some things that maybe sometimes you don't always get to do inside the normal confines of the space station, because we just want to make sure that the astronauts continue to maintain, that they're safe and they're healthy.
Oh yeah, there's a premium on the space in there for sure.
Yeah. So the Cygnus vehicle is very important to us for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, while it's on station, it is something that we have the ability to put a lot of extra materials or trash into it, which is very important because we only have so much room on the space station. But again, you can also do some fun experiments on it once it leaves the space station that maybe you wouldn't have the ability to do when it was affixed to the orbiting laboratory. So there's been a lot of combustion investigations over the years. And now there's this one where, again, they're going to be looking at propulsion mechanisms and toggling to see kind of, is there something that they can learn while they're leveraging that Cygnus spacecraft for the time that they have to be able to extrapolate that and put that into other satellite technology in the future. There's another investigation that's going up. It's called Capture Bag. It's also known as Flytrap too, but it's a space debris tech demonstration, and it's going to be using Voyager Technologies' Bishop Airlock. And it's basically going to be trying to see, again, can we catch things in that space environment? And this is a tech demo, and it's happening on the inside of the space station in a confined environment on the Bishop Airlock. But at the same time, eventually, is that something that could be put on the outside of, if not this space station, then future space stations, so that way we can, again, try to catch things as we see them coming and maintain mission viability.
Patrick, anything else you want to mention about what's coming up that you want to leave the audience with today?
Well, I mean, one thing I would say is, I think we talked about this last time too, one of the projects that was flying on SpaceX 33 was looking at edge computing, AI components.
Yep.
Well, we're going to be having another one that's going to be, and this is what's cool, is that you're having a lot of these companies recognize the critical importance of us to be able to transfer data in bandwidth and cloud computing components in space, and that's going to be beneficial for us from a research perspective, and it's going to be beneficial for us as we continue to explore. So there's going to be a project that's through Voyager Technologies as well, called Leo Cloud or ENIAC Cloud, and that's going to be kind of building on some of the similar types of ideas of edge computing in space. And so, the great thing again is if we're having multiple ways of people to test edge computing, then eventually the market's going to dictate what the best avenue is as we continue to live and work on this space station. So again, we're using this ISS as a great platform for an incubator in low Earth orbit, where we get to test, mix, and match. And then as we go to these commercial destinations in low Earth orbit, we can get a real good sense of what are the best pathways forward for some of these technologies, so that we can transfer data, so that we can have AI in space, so that we can iterate investigations in space before they come back down for further analysis, and then have to fly again a few years later. So what can we do to make this space station as equipped as possible, so that we can equally equip other space stations down the road?
We'll be right back.
At Thales, they know cybersecurity can be tough and you can't protect everything. But with Thales, you can secure what matters most. With Thales's industry-leading platforms, you can protect critical applications, data, and identities, anywhere and at scale with the highest ROI. That's why the most trusted brands and largest banks, retailers, and healthcare companies in the world rely on Thales to protect what matters most: applications, data, and identity. That's Thales. THALES. Learn more at thalesgroup.com/cyber.
Welcome back. I'll hand you over to Torsten Kreining from Spacewatch Global with the latest from World Space Business Week in Paris.
Hello, our T-minus listeners. Hey, Spacewatchers. It is our great pleasure to give you our daily update on the World Space Business Week 2025 here in Paris. And I'm sharing a few points here for the daily show. Day one is always a busy one. This year it is a new location, as the good old Westin is about to get renovated. So the event moved to the Hotel de Collectionnaire and again got sold out. That is fantastic. This event is the most important commercial space gathering in Europe, created by Novaspace. The opening by Novaspace CEO Pacôme Rebillon showed where the global sector stands, the global space sector, of course. He highlighted the event's growth and the involvement of major sponsors and partners. He emphasized the 3 pillars of space activities: sovereignty, technology, and business. This global space investment is approaching $50 billion, driven by defense and security. Over 100 countries invest in space, with 50 focusing on military assets. Technological advancements, including digital broadcasting and mega constellations, have significantly impacted the industry. The sector is experiencing active M&A activities with over 50 transactions this year. The SATCOM market is expected to reach $130 billion by the end of this decade, driven by broadband and data-centric businesses. ESA's Director General, Dr. Josef Aschbacher, also discussed financial plans and budgets. ESA's budget is €7.7 billion annually. The European Commission's proposal for the next multinational financial framework, MFF, includes €130 billion for space and defense, a 5-fold increase. Dr. Aschbacher emphasized the importance of aligning ESA's activity with the Commission and strengthening global partnerships, particularly in the context of geopolitical changes. Next point of interest was the press conference of EchoStar, talking about the spectrum deal with SpaceX. EchoStar shared more about their recent change of course. With a result, they became the first and only what they call a hybrid MNO. With this critical move, they abandoned their long-standing business plan and practice and pivoted to something different and unexpected, demonstration in agility and example of how to meet the rapid demand of the industry. This is going to be a massive growth company. We also attended the press conference of ESA Aerospace, the Munich-based small launcher that had their first launch attempt earlier this year. In the press conference, they talked in detail about the launch failure and the goal they had. The goal was to leave the pad and to test their own developed flight termination system. There was an unintended opening of a valve, and in parallel, they lost communication with the altitude control, a software failure. They could discover 90 to 95% of the rocket. So, way forward, they are in test campaigns to get the certification for the found error and to get the license to launch again. Just to remind, Spectrum, their rocket, is an in-house built rocket to launch up to 1 ton to LEO orbit. This is needed as part of the European sovereignty to access space frequently in the near future. We can expect another launch in the months to come, as this topic of European launchers is very hot for Europe at the moment here. We also had an exciting panel about the space activities of the GCC, Gulf Cooperation countries, the Middle Eastern countries. That included UAE's MBRSC and Space 42, Saudi Arabia's New Space Group and others. Definitely a part of the world to watch. For tomorrow, the event will split into the main track of the World Space Business Week, continuing on infrastructure launchers in orbit servicing and manufacturing, and in parallel, the SDSS, the Space Defense and Security Summit, focusing fully on the defense side. My quote of the day from Fred Turbin on the financial panel: "You have to get in love with revenues." Stay tuned for your Spacewatch Global update from Paris.
That's it from T-Minus, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. What do you think about T-Minus Space Daily? Please take a few minutes to share your thoughts with us by completing our brief listener survey. Thank you for helping us to continue to improve our show. We're proud that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K helps space and cybersecurity professionals grow, learn, and stay informed. As the nexus for discovery and connection, we bring you the people, technology, and ideas shaping the future of secure innovation. Learn how at n2k.com. N2K's executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our producer is Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our host is Maria Varmazes. Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I'm N2K senior producer Alice Carruth. Thanks for listening.
T-minus.
Think your certificate security is covered? By March 2026, TLS certificate lifespans will be cut in half, meaning double today's renewals. And in 2029, certificates will expire every 47 days, demanding between 8 and 12 times the renewal volume. That's exponential complexity, operational workload, and risk, unless you modernize your strategy. CyberArk, proven in identity security, is your partner in certificate security. CyberArk simplifies lifecycle management with visibility, automation, and control at scale. Master the 47-day shift with CyberArk. Scan for vulnerabilities, streamline operations, scale security. Visit cyberark.com/47day. That's cyberark.com/47day.